All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Superlative Podcast. I'm Edward Bushi. One guest, no edits, no post production, just a short live conversation about what it really takes to reach higher levels and what comes next. So let's get into it. Uh, I want to introduce everybody to Lindley Lentati. He is the CEO and founder of Tertium AI and Cambridge Inference. Lindley is sounding the alarm on a scenario most technologists haven't fully gamed out. The moment the US government locks down frontier AI the way it once locked down the nuclear bomb, and what the rest of the world does when that day comes. Before we get to your story, just want to say a big thank you for you coming on board and chatting with us. And would love to know before we start, what could you describe what you do in 2 sentences, and then we can go from there.
Sure. Broadly speaking, I do things that try and mean that AI goes well. It's like the very short summary.
Oh, okay, there you go. So before you got into AI, right, and where you are with this nonprofit and profit company, how would you describe your journey and how this all started?
Yeah, so back in the day, I really thought that I wanted to be in academia permanently. So I was doing my PhD in astrophysics, studying gravitational waves. Had a postdoc, had this all mapped out, become a lecturer one day, these sorts of things. And I really fell out of love with academia. And so, like any good astrophysicist, went into finance and became a quant. So worked at a hedge fund and then a prop trading company, building algorithmic trading strategies. In particular, in the second one, doing some really cool things, actually training reinforcement learning agents to take actions in the market and actually trade directly themselves at kind of milli or microsecond speeds. So this was my first real interaction with training AI that was taking actions in the real world. And while I was doing that, I was introduced to Blue Dot. So Blue Dot is this nonprofit. They were based in Cambridge, actually moving to San Francisco. And Blue Dot does courses on AI safety. So the risks associated with building and training ever more capable AI models, the impact that will have on the world, and what individuals like myself can do to try and reduce those risks going forward, to make sure that we have access to all the benefits, right? So better medicine, better technology, reducing poverty, and all these sorts of things, all the things that AI promises, while trying to minimize the risks. So that's a loss of control. So where AI systems just have their own goals and aren't sufficiently controlled so that they can take control from humans, but also geopolitical risks. So even in futures where AI does the things that we ask, there's this kind of whole slew of risks associated with power concentration and lock-in and these sorts of things. So after leaving finance, I co-founded Cambridge Inference. And we've been building AI security software. So building software so that banks and defense and pharma and governments can run AI and do the first bit, right? So reduce the risks of loss of control, reduce the risks of using AI in these kind of critical industries, make sure that goes well, so we get the benefits while minimizing the risks. And Tertium AI, I founded this year to address the second thing, to try and reduce geopolitical risks associated with power concentration in the US.
Gotcha. And it sounds like, well, it is like two separate organizations, right? One, once after doing the research, one is a profit, and another one is a non-profit.
Correct.
So how did that decision to why did it bifurcate that way?
Yeah, so Cambridge Inference, as I came first. So this I co-founded with two other people. So a fellow PhD student from Cambridge University, and actually our PhD supervisor. So he was a professor at Cambridge and still actually is part-time.
Okay.
And here we just really recognized that there's just this huge opportunity in lowering the risks of AI. And for this kind of like a for-profit vehicle, where enterprise institutions, where defense contractors and things like this can license a software product to help them onboard AI and get used to the benefits. For-profit vehicle here just made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Whereas for tertium, I mean, fundamentally, I take the view that for-profit companies should not be the things that are building superintelligence. I feel like there's
like OpenAI. Then you're taking a stab at OpenAI in that case. Yes.
OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, XAI. I feel like, yeah, there's just this whole set of risks that open up when you're having to trade like concrete safety around releasing models that are, eventually going to be more intelligent than humans, right? More capable than humans. Trying to balance the interests of shareholders with the interests of like people. I think the for-profits are just not the right vehicle for doing this in general. And actually, we've seen this with Anthropic, right? I mean, early days in Anthropic, so Anthropic have this thing called responsible scaling policies, right? It's like the rules that govern how they release models or what they're willing to release.
Yeah.
And originally, they very clearly said that they wouldn't release models that pose a risk to everyone in the world. And their most recent update said that they will, right? If they have to commercially, then they will release models that they know are dangerous for the world. And this is the problem, right? This is the conflict with having for-profits developing technology where you have these systems that are just fundamentally, well, certainly potentially very dangerous, at least when they reach the levels of human or superhuman intelligence.
Yeah. So look, that's very interesting. Nobody like sees companies like operating this way in it, or thinking about like the outcomes or the consequences of what they're building, right? So that's a really different angle that you're approaching AI with, right? Most people are thinking about the capability race, right? Who ships next model, who wins the benchmark. What made you step back and look at the geopolitical structure and who controls it?
I think in large part being a UK citizen, this was like a big part of it. And also just talking to people and just really engaging with the idea of what will these future AI systems enable, right? If you really just stop and think about what will happen when you have human or greater than human capable AIs, like across the board. And right now we have narrow verticals, we have AI that are human level, superhuman, but it's not like this general AGI or ASI. It's kind of the really critical thing. And I think that when you just stop and think about this, then you kind of realize that there is no reason whatsoever that the US will want to share AI beyond some capability level with the rest of the world. It just makes absolutely no strategic sense whatsoever. And the analogy that I like, that I actually gave a talk on this earlier this year, is like you imagine that someone just presents you with this button, this big red button, and they say, if you push this button, then your country, the whole population of your country gets like security and prosperity forever, right? No other country in the world can stand up to you or threaten you ever again. And it's like, if this button existed, would the president of the United States press it, independent of who their president is, right? And I think clearly they will, and also clearly they should, right? As a non-US citizen, I'm very happy to say that I think the president of the United States should push that button, as should any leader of the country if they have the
chance.
Yeah. And historically, we've seen like potential versions of this button and have seen that it was pushed at the time, right? So the closest analogy to this are nuclear weapons. So here, the UK, we helped the US build nuclear weapons, part of the Manhattan Project. And very shortly after this was completed, the US passed this act, the McMahon Act, which cut the UK off from that technology. And it's interesting, right? You listen to you read what Truman and General Groves were saying at the time, and they fully expected it to be decades before any other country, including the UK, managed to kind of replicate this accomplishment in building an atomic weapon, which would have given the US plenty of time to like amass this huge arsenal of nuclear weapons and have this kind of permanent geopolitical like stranglehold on the rest of the world, right? If this one country has a huge nuclear arsenal and no one else does, this would basically let them dictate terms to any other country in the world. And this obviously didn't play out. I mean, Russia took 4 years, which was nowhere near enough time for the US to build enough nukes. And so then what happened was, the UK 12 years later, the US eventually provided access again after we'd already then shown that we could do this on our own, right? We had our own project to build the atomic and hydrogen bombs. And then you have the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty, where it's very clear to the US at the time that this is now just a thing that exists in the world. They no longer have a monopoly. And the next best thing that they can do is sign this treaty which says, okay, if you're in the club, then you're in the club. And if you're not, then you're not and never will be. And this is now the status quo. I mean, obviously, some countries have just done it anyway, and they've been hit with sanctions and other things. But I fully expect the same thing to play out with advanced AI, this like recursively self-improving AI, where the US will take the view that this technology will allow them to have a massive strategic advantage over every other country in the world, and they'll push the button. Unfortunately, with AI, we don't have this 12-year period to then catch up, right? Nuclear technology is kind of nice in the sense that it's quite static. I mean, obviously, it does get better over time, but it's not kind of exponentially improving. Whereas with AI, especially AI that's recursively self-improving, AI that's doing AI research and development and improving itself, 10 years time,
it's exponential. It's improvement.
Yeah. So there's just we really need to be keeping pace at the point that we get AI at that level. And then I think the same thing can happen, right? If the middle powers have AI that's comparable to what the US have, then I think we can come to the table and we can go, look, we're equals. Let's work together on this and move forward as, a set of allied democracies, kind of unified AI bloc. But if we're not there, then I just see no reason for the US to do that. Sorry, that was quite a long monologue.
No, but like it makes sense. Like in a world where there's only one superpower that wants to develop a technology, the best way to like be at the negotiating table is to essentially show up and build stuff on your side.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like, isn't it interesting though that we're getting into this situation where the technology would be just closed to just certain key countries, right? And like, is it like inevitable with like any technology? I guess.
I mean, certainly not any technology,
or rather any like such like powerful technology, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's like a certain class of strategically important technology, like nuclear weapons, like superintelligence, where having it and not having it are just so different. I mean, something like, so there's this nice example, or this nice sort of experiment of the century in a decade, which I think for me really demonstrates why it's important to have this technology. So, if you imagine what life was like 100 years ago in the UK or Canada, it's like, we had no motorways, we had disease was rampant, we didn't have space travel, we didn't even have computers, mRNA, all these sorts of things, the internet. You ask someone from 100 years ago.
We had the Great Depression around this time, 100 years ago.
Yeah. And if you ask someone then what technology they imagine existing 100 years from that point, they're not going to say the internet, right? I mean, it's just like this, or like mobile phones, or the kind of stuff that's so ubiquitous now. And so imagining what AI could do and compressing all that down to 10 years, right? So here you have like the Manhattan Project, which would take 3 months in this world, like this accelerated timeline. So going from imagining a nuclear weapon to actually testing it is 3 months. space travel, like from the first rockets kind of cresting the atmosphere to humans landing on the moon is a couple of years. It's just insane to think about how fast technology can move and how poorly adapted we are as a species to technology moving that fast. I mean, it was interesting. So following the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy said that if it had happened any faster, then they would probably have taken riskier actions in that period of time. And I think this is exactly correct. And in this kind of wild future, the Cuban Missile Crisis takes like a day. Right?
And you can't make decisions like critical decisions so like frivolously. It's actually gets scary. I can imagine that.
Yeah. And so you can imagine what some of this technology might be, right? I mean, technology that allows you to detect nuclear submarines, technology that allows you to have kind of impenetrable defensive shield, basically technology that allows you to subvert other countries' nuclear deterrence. And again, if one country has this, and only one country has this just puts them in a very different place than every other country in the world and allows them to take actions that no other country is in a position to take.
So like this, when we got into the onboarding call between you and I was so surprised that this was taking place, right? Just so that the viewers know, like, how do we know this centralization is happening, right? And like how do the mechanisms work? How is a company like beholden to work under this scenario under the United States? How does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, so the US has legal mechanisms for basically making a private company take on government work. It's the Defense Procurement Act. And although this has not been used in like such an extreme case, I think there's no reason to think that the US government would not use it to do this. I mean, already we've seen just in the last week, I think since we've talked, or maybe it had just happened then, that the White House has said that they don't want Anthropic to share mythos with European countries, right? European private. And indeed that they want to start vetting new releases to see if they're like national security critical, right? So we're already kind of entering this world where the US is willing to say, US first, everyone else second. And probably even within the US, right, there'll be a US companies / public, and then US government. And the US government gets the best stuff, then the US public, and then everyone else.
Yeah. Isn't it a double-edged sword though? Because like if some shenanigans happened, like a bad actor uses the most powerful AI, we could say it came from the US. Right. Why would the US want to hold on to like a hot potato like that?
I guess it's just a risk-reward trade-off, right? Yes, a bad actor could use it to do terrible things. In principle, one could imagine futures where a benevolent government has access to this technology and uses it for the betterment of the rest of the world. My feeling is that that's not the most plausible future. But yeah, I just think that the trade-off, like the potential upsides of doing this from a kind of security and strategy point of view, outweigh the kind of negative press, right? Or like the potential of someone within the government, I guess we're in particular talking about, going rogue and doing something themselves. Presumably the people in government will at least be following like the president's orders. And therefore, if the US government decides to use the AI to do something bad, that's at the behest of, the command chain. And so they'll just make the argument that whatever this action was, it's in America's best interests. I think it's relatively unlikely that you'll get this kind of rogue actor who has this kind of very high security clearance just taking the initiative to do something bad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so you're painting a picture where there's going to be a huge concentration of power, or rather influence over AI development, right? It's happening in the United States. And I'd like to circle back to like what you're doing with Tertium AI and Cambridge. You gave us 2 sentences at the beginning. So like how are you like how are you doing the work to like solving this issue?
Yes, tertium. I just founded this recently, but I've been having discussions with various bits of the UK government now for a few months.
Mm,
Um, and the idea is essentially that although the US is incredibly powerful, right, spends something like $1 trillion a year on defense, obviously enormous GDP, that if you go around and you tot up UK, Europe, Canada, Australia, Japan, South Korea, all these places, actually we're very comparable as an
mm,
entity, right? In terms of defense spending, in terms of GDP, we have a similar total impact. We just have this massive coordination problem where we kind of don't act together. We all just do our own thing. Um, However, if there was some program in place, right, some middle powers AI program where all of these countries got together and they shared capital and data and expertise and compute, then in principle, this collective could build AI systems that are comparable to US closed AI companies. And
mm,
so Tertium was basically set up to try and initiate this process, to try and solve these coordination problems, and to try and just get the ball rolling. And I think this is really the critical thing.
mm.
Over the next few years, more and more governments around the world are going to be waking up to the fact that they need access, like, to the AI itself, right? Not just being served over an API from a US company, but actually access to the AI itself.
The weights
And
you're saying.
the weights, exactly,
Yeah.
access to the AI weights themselves. Um, and that almost certainly they will not be in a position as an individual country to do this on their own. I think that probably there is no, other than China, obviously, there is no other country in the world that can compete individually with the US. But collectively, we absolutely can.
Mm. Yeah. So you describe a tiered weight distribution model, open weight. I mean, this is from our call too, right?
Yeah.
Previously, open weight at first, then shared weight once capabilities become dangerous.
Yes.
Would access gated by how good a country's cyber defenses are. Who
Yeah.
decides like when that threshold happened? Like how do you? Yeah.
Yeah,
Think
so
about
this,
that metric.
I think it's important that this is not a political decision, right? This is not
Mm,
with governments. This is with AI security institutes. So UK AC is certainly one of the best of these in the world. It's one of actually our big strengths, the UK as a country in AI. But there are plenty of others, right? More countries around the world are getting their own AI security institutes. These are people whose expertise are determining whether models are dangerous or not. And
mm,
so these collectively, the idea is that they would determine, firstly, when can you no longer be reducing these models open weight, right? When do they enable individuals to start doing comprehensive cyber attacks? When do they start uplifting individuals to produce novel bioweapons or chemical weapons, right? These sorts of things. At that point, you clearly don't want to just be putting these weights on Hugging Face for anyone to download.
mm,
So at that point, you start providing them shared weights. So shared weight means that you give the weights to the governments who are part of this coalition, but they aren't public. So the government
mm,
is free to distribute them to critical industries or to downstream inference providers who can then serve those weights to customers over um, controlled API endpoints like Anthropic and OpenAI do today.
mm,
However, there you still have this risk of cyber attack, right? So a nation state or a well-equipped set of very talented individuals could infiltrate the data center where those weights are being run and just
mm.
steal them and then put them online.
Yep.
And
Open source. Yeah.
yeah,
We can do that.
and
Yeah.
so this is where this like cyber defensive capabilities thing comes in. The more capable the weights are, the more like capable your cyber defensive abilities need to be. And so here again, wouldn't be a government decision. So
Mm,
RAND, as an organization, they've published this framework on how to secure model weights. They have this kind of tier of SL level, so SL1 to 5, where SL5 means that you can protect against, a nation state full on trying to steal the weights, and SL1 is you can stop, I don't know, like a hobbyist cyber attacker or something like this, right? Um, and
that's
so
very
again,
yeah.
like the AI security institutes would say, well, okay, we've now reached the point where you need SL1 and then SL2 and 3 and so on. And then the only thing that stops a country having access to the weights is whether or not they've achieved this particular level of defensive capability. And as soon as they do, as soon as they build a data center that is SL3 compliant, then they get the SL3 weights. And obviously other countries can help them do that, right, through for-profit data center service providers. I mean, there's this kind of huge like cottage industry that you can start spinning up around serving the models, right? You don't just have one mega company who has the weights and is serving them. You can have like a more internet service provider model where many companies can serve the weights to people. You can have industries around installing those weights within enterprise customers. You can have industries around building data centers in countries that don't have SLX compliance to help them get the next generation of weights. I mean, it really feels like you're distributing the benefit so much broadly.
No, it sounds like what you guys are doing are also like designing a distribution model for a more I mean, a less scary AI,
Yeah.
but like still very useful because, and it's hard to like, to me, like it's hard to strike the balance because maybe you need the most creative and most deeply knowledgeable AI out there, right? So how do you balance that? Like yeah, safety, but you need a very innovative, powerful AI at the same time.
Yeah. So the end goal of this program would be that, you know, this coalition of middle powers has something that is competitive with US closed. So it has something that is as good as the best US models. You're right that individual countries, if they don't have the right defensive capabilities, would obviously still want the better model, but this just incentivizes them to invest in that infrastructure. I mean, fundamentally, I think that there's, you know, you do have to have some limitations in what models you provide what country just to stop the weights being stolen, right? I mean, I think no one wants highly capable AI weights being put into the hands of dangerous individuals.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is very like thought provoking as a conversation, right? I've like we're living in a time like that's comparable to the nuclear age, where like nuclear technology is being developed, but it's happening much faster and literally right in front of us, not in the lab somewhere. We're experiencing AI as it improves. So I want to end with a question and like see where it lands with you, right? So you describe a future where the US locks in a 20-year technological lead in 2 years, and said the only check on that is middle powers building a credible counterweight together. If tertium succeeds and the coalition exists in 3 years, what does that change about the race that's already underway?
So the main thing is the goal here is to try and have as few races as possible, right? So if at the end of 3 years, say, this middle powers coalition could have caught up with the US and actually includes the US within it, and kind of really changes the way that AI is developed, so that you don't have all of these for-profits all racing one another to try and outdo the other. But you have this kind of coalition that builds the models, and then individual companies can do a bit of fine tuning to add whatever the character is that they want, or serve it to their particular client base, these sorts of things. Then at least you've reduced the kind of within the US race for frontier AI, and now you're just kind of allied democratic bloc, I guess, versus China, and export controls that the US are currently applying on China with GPUs, I mean, I think have been highly successful, right? I mean, this is clearly, I think, like the main reason why China has not been able to catch up in the AI race is because they just haven't had access to the hardware to train. And so if that continues, then I would hope that this kind of middle powers plus US coalition would have the breathing room to ensure that they can build AI that's still, 6 months, a year ahead of what's coming out of China, but do it in a way that's actually safe and minimizes the risks for everyone.
Yeah, and I like the idea of like reducing the race. The less of a race it is, the more the less impulse there is to like develop and weaponize the AI.
Yeah, exactly.
That's that was a good takeaway from like this conversation and from the onboarding call that I had. So, Lindley, like this is very deep as a discussion, and like we could like go deeper, but how can folks reach out to you and learn and help you out in your mission?
Yeah, so there's tertiaryma.org, there's a website, there's an email that they can contact me on. I'm very interested to hear from people who currently work at frontier AI companies, especially in the UK and other middle powers, right? If you're in the UK or Canada or Australia and you're working for OpenAI or DeepMind or Anthropic, I'd be very interested to hear from you to understand, if there was this credible alternative to empowering the US on the table, would you take it? And this is like one of the key uncertainties that we have around the project and that we're talking to the government about. Also, if you think that this is a great idea, you're a philanthropic funder, please get in touch. We're really trying to scale up, hire more people. We're at the moment trying to put together a proper feasibility study for the UK government on this Middle Powers Coalition and start talking to other governments around the world. If you have contacts in other governments around the world, again, reach out.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really fantastic conversation, and like I'm certain, like from this and other work, that people will reach out more to you. So, Lindley, I have to say, really good conversation. Thank you for coming to the stage today, and for folks listening, also, thank you for coming on board and listening in. This has been the episode 15 of the Superlative Podcast, and yeah, we'll leave it at here.
Thank you very much.